The day I asked for a divorce was the day Clara's 5-year sentence came to an end. It was a marriage she had been forced into, a cage I had built around us both. Now, the door was finally open. I remember the day the divorce was finalized, seeing her walk away with her first love, Daniel. She had looked back at me, a genuine smile on her face for the first time in years, but it didn't reach her voice. "Look at you, Leo," she'd said, a familiar sneer curling her lip. So pathetic. I watched her turn her back, her form blurring until it was just a shape against the light. Pathetic, maybe, but not in the next life. It began the moment I asked. Clara just stood there in the study, staring at me for a very long time, her gaze so intense it felt like she was trying to see right through me, to burn away the years of lies and resentment. It wasn't until I slid the divorce papers across the polished wood of the desk, already bearing my signature, that she seemed to snap out of her trance. Her fingers, long and elegant, traced the edges of the document as she read it over and over. I could see the disbelief in her posture. After 5 years of being tangled in this mess together, I was the one initiating the end. A long pause stretched the silence in the room. Finally, she tossed the papers down, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on her lips. "I don't understand this," she said, her voice clipped and businesslike. "I'll need my legal team to review it." I gripped the pen in my hand a little tighter, my knuckles white. "You don't need to," I explained, keeping my voice steady. "I'm leaving with nothing. I don't want any of the assets, the properties, nothing." Her voice sharpened, laced with suspicion. "How do I know you're not trying to trick me with some hidden clause?" I looked up at her then, and for a fleeting moment I remembered the night it all began 5 years ago. She had held that grudge like a shield, but after all this time, she knew me better than anyone. She knew what kind of person I was, or at least the person I had tried to be. I dropped the pen and leaned back in my chair. "Fine," I said, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. "Draft your own agreement. I'll wait. I'll come back and sign whatever you put in front of me." With that, I stood up to leave, but she moved to block my path. "Wait here," she said, an unexpected urgency in her voice. "It won't take long." She seemed desperate to sever our connection then and there, practically flying out of the room as if escaping a fire. I sank onto the large sofa in the eerily quiet office. The doctor's words from last week echoed in the silence. Late-stage leukemia. You might not even have time for a bone marrow transplant. I let out a long, slow sigh, staring at the empty doorway where she had vanished. She probably wouldn't care at all. A warm trickle started from my nose. I swiped at it with the back of my hand, but it didn't stop. I quickly reached for the tissue box on her desk, pulling out a thick wad and tilting my head back. It was a good thing no one else was here to see it. Soon enough, Clara returned, holding a freshly printed divorce agreement. She saw me leaning back, my hand pressed to my face, and a flicker of surprise crossed her features. "What are you doing?" she asked. I quickly balled up the bloody tissues, tossed them into the wastebasket, and sat up, trying to appear natural. When I took the new agreement from her, I saw the clauses she'd added. I was to leave with nothing that wasn't explicitly mine from before the marriage. That included jewelry, clothes, even shoes she had bought. I knew who those things were meant for, and I had never wanted them anyway. I signed my name without hesitation and handed it back to her. After checking it thoroughly, she finally spoke, her voice devoid of any emotion. "Leo, I expect you to keep your word. I don't want to see you again." I knew how much she despised me. In 5 years, she'd never once looked at me with anything other than contempt. I glanced at her familiar figure standing by the door, a silhouette of our shared, broken past. and nodded. We probably wouldn't see each other again. In the 5 years Clara and I were married, I rarely bought myself anything new, and I never touched the clothes she occasionally had delivered for me. After signing the papers, I packed a small bag with a few changes of my old clothes and left the grand house that had never felt like a home. I was, for all intents and purposes, homeless. After a long moment of deliberation, I finally called my brother, Sam. I did have a home once, 5 years ago. I had loving parents and a kind, protective older brother. I hadn't spoken to Sam in what felt like an eternity. The phone rang for a long time before he picked up. A slightly impatient voice met my ear. "What is it?" I froze, a sudden, unexpected wave of sadness washing over me. "Sam," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I want to come home." He seemed to think for a long time on the other end of the line, before finally sighing. "Come back then. We'll talk." To get to our old family house, I had to walk through a narrow, dark alley that was never properly lit. In a daze, I thought I saw Sam's familiar figure at the other end, walking toward me. He knew I was afraid of the dark. When we were kids, he would always come to meet me. I reached out a hand, but the figure vanished. I was still standing alone in the dim, oppressive alley. I couldn't remember the last time Sam had come through this alley to meet me. Swallowing my fear, I finally made it to the front door. Sam was sitting in the living room, his face grim. Before I could even sit down, he threw a stack of papers at my chest. I picked them up and saw they were project contracts, all stamped with "Cancelled" in bold red ink. "Look what you've done," he said, his voice flat. I didn't argue. It was clear Clara had told Sam about the divorce immediately and was now retaliating against our family's small construction business. "Leo, when you schemed your way into Clara's bed, did you ever think it would come to this?" He spat, his anger finally boiling over. "Now that she's sick of you and dumped you, you want to come home? Does our family owe you something? You're going to destroy us. We'll lose everything because of you." His eyes were bloodshot, his emotions spiraling out of control. It was the first time in 5 years he'd said so much to me, letting out all the pent-up rage he'd been holding. I knew he had always blamed me, and I couldn't say he was wrong. These past 5 years hadn't been easy for anyone. I held back my tears as the sharp edges of the paper dug into my hand. A familiar wave of dizziness washed over me, but paradoxically it cleared my head for a moment. I quickly pressed my fingers to my nose, holding it for a long time. No blood? Good. Once Sam had calmed down a little, I finally spoke. "Whatever we owe, I'll do my best to pay it back." With my illness, I didn't know how much time I had left. But before I died, I would do everything I could to repay the debts I had brought upon them. Sam looked me up and down as if I'd told a terrible joke. "With what?" Then he suddenly seemed to remember something. "Clara is having dinner with those business partners tonight. You're coming with me. We'll go and ask her to help us out." "We're divorced," I said weakly. "Then tell me how you're going to help, Leo. Clara is the only one who can help us now." Before I could say anything else, Sam had grabbed the canceled contracts and was dragging me out the door. I hadn't expected to see Clara again so soon. She was in a great mood that night, laughing and drinking every glass offered to her by the smirking business partners at the table. She didn't refuse a single one. Only Sam and I sat in the corner, forgotten like a pair of sad clowns. She didn't even acknowledge the glass Sam raised in her direction. The others at the table exchanged knowing glances and began to mock us. "Looks like the brothers don't know their place. Clara gave you so many projects, and now you're eyeing ours? Such a big appetite. Be careful you don't bite off more than you can chew." Sam's face fell, but he quickly put on a brittle smile. "All those old projects were canceled. We're just hoping Clara can throw us a bone." Clara looked over, her expression one of pure annoyance. She pointed a finger at me. You want new projects? Fine. He has to be the one to toast me. Sam looked flustered. He glanced at me and quickly tried to explain. He can't drink. I'll drink with you, Clara. She didn't budge, her eyes fixed on me. She always loved seizing any opportunity to humiliate me. Sam stepped in front of me, trying to smooth things over. You were married, after all. Don't make things so hard for him. I'll drink, I said, my voice barely audible. It was strong liquor, probably over 100 proof. Sam, desperate, began downing glass after glass. His face flushed a deep red until he couldn't take any more. He suddenly retched, throwing up on the floor near the table. Clara recoiled in disgust, quickly stepping aside and wiping her hands with a silk handkerchief. I moved to help Sam, but he pushed me toward Clara. Quick, apologize to Clara. Ask her to help our family. I picked up a glass of the fiery liquor from the table and chugged it down. I knew this was what she wanted to see. My stomach churned. The words she wanted to hear, the begging, were on the tip of my tongue, but what came out was, "We'll find a way to pay back the money we owe. If Clara doesn't want to give us these projects, that's fine." Hearing this, Sam seemed to sober up instantly. In a fit of pure rage, he slapped me hard across the face. "Do you even know what you're saying? Without her help, our family is finished. How are you going to pay back all those debts? Leo, do you even know how Mom and Dad died?" My head buzzed, as if a needle had been driven into my skull. I could barely stand, and I started to fall sideways. Clara seemed to have no patience for our family drama. Seeing me collapse to the floor, her voice dripped with sarcasm. "Don't put on a show for me. It's disgusting." Then she walked around my crumpled form. I looked up and saw her take someone's arm at the door, leaving without a single backward glance. I desperately fought back the nausea, digging my fingernails into my palms to ground myself. A warm trickle of liquid ran from my nose again. Sam stared at me, his anger replaced by shock. "Leo, what's wrong with you?" I wasn't about to use my illness to gain his pity. I tried to sound casual. "Drank too fast. Just a bit of a nosebleed from the alcohol." The panic in his eyes vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by his usual cold expression. "Our family is ruined because of you. Mom and Dad died because of you. Leo, you're a jinx. How can you still be living so comfortably?" I knew he was just saying those things out of anger. He used to be so good to me. But it was also true that he hated me now. That thing 5 years ago. It felt like I was the only one at fault. Suddenly, I felt an exhaustion so profound it settled deep in my bones. I wiped my face haphazardly and walked out of the restaurant alone. The wind cut to the bone on the nearly empty streets. Dried blood caked my face, and I rubbed it hard with my sleeve, remembering Clara's parting words. It's disgusting. I didn't know why, but I suddenly felt weak all over and collapsed against a cold brick wall. She was also talking about what happened 5 years ago, and what happened 5 years ago was all my fault. In the end, they had every right to hate me. Back then, I had just graduated from college and landed a promising internship at a top law firm. My future looked bright. I was so busy with work that I rarely went home. My parents, worried about me being alone, planned to sell our house and move to the city where I worked. Housing was incredibly expensive, so to join me sooner, they took on a side construction project and acted as guarantors for the loan. They were careless. The person in charge ran off with the money, and suddenly my parents were saddled with an enormous, crushing debt. From then on, Sam and I started getting frequent, threatening calls from debt collectors. Later, my parents were cornered, driven to the rooftop of an unfinished building by those same collectors. The day they jumped, I was out of town with my boss, handling a last-minute legal dispute for Clara's company right before its IPO. At the celebratory dinner that night, Clara was modest and polite, handling herself with an effortless grace. When she complimented my work, there was always a gentle smile on her face. I glanced at her and met her dark, intelligent eyes, and my heart inexplicably sped up. Later, after a drink was sent to our table, things spiraled out of control. When I woke up, my parents had jumped, and debt collectors were at our door. Sam's voice on the phone was desperate. "Leo, come home, quick! Something's happened to Mom and Dad!" That same day, Clara and I were ambushed by a horde of reporters outside our hotel room. News broke that she, a prominent CEO on the verge of a major public offering, had a messy private life. To save her company's reputation, she had to lie and say we were a long-term couple. I had planned to sort out my family's affairs and then help her clear things up. But when I saw my parents lying in that cold, sterile morgue, a surge of raw, desperate resentment washed over me. Burdened with huge debts, I barely had the energy to breathe, let alone find the person who had destroyed my family. So I changed my story. At the press conference, I said I wanted to marry Clara, that I was using her to achieve my own goals. I still remember her shocked, incredulous expression. She looked like she was being torn apart. I went with her to her house afterward and asked to borrow money. She was furious, throwing a credit card at my head. "Stop following me," she hissed. "You disgust me." It was a stark contrast to the polite, humble woman I'd seen before. That night I saw her first love, Daniel, come to her. He leaned into her embrace, sobbing quietly. I didn't have much headspace for anything else. I transferred the money to Sam so he could start paying off the debts. He called me shameless. In the end, it was all my fault. I lay by the roadside, chilled to the bone. Someone nudged me, then carefully helped me up. "Leo? Leo?" Was that Clara's voice? Or Sam's? I couldn't quite tell. I slowly opened my eyes and saw a strange, kind face. So it was neither of them. It was all in my head. I touched my face and then my forehead. I was burning up. The man who woke me jumped back when he saw my blood-smeared face. I used all my remaining strength to push myself up, my head feeling as heavy as a lead ball. The man asked if he should call an ambulance. I shook my head, declining his kindness. I dragged my broken body to the hospital alone. By now it was broad daylight, and my frozen, stiff body slowly began to warm up. I registered with a doctor I didn't know, and waited quietly on a hard plastic chair. Dr. Sharma saw me sitting alone in the hallway, her expression puzzled. "Leo, what are you doing here? Are you not feeling well?" I looked up at her, feeling a pang of guilt. "I have a fever. Came to get some medicine." "Come with me, let me take a look," she said gently. When I didn't move, she stopped and asked, "What's wrong?" "I registered with another doctor," I mumbled. "It's nothing serious. I just need some cold medicine." Seeing the stern look on her face, I finally got up and followed her into her office. Truthfully, I just didn't want to bother her. Every time I came to see Dr. Sharma, she either waived the consultation fee or paid for my medication out of her own pocket. I owed her too much, and I was afraid I wouldn't be able to pay it all back before I died. After Anya asked about my symptoms, her brow furrowed instantly. Her tone was serious. "It's getting worse, Leo. You should be admitted to the hospital as soon as possible." I pulled out my phone and re-registered under her name, then tried to sound casual. "There's no need. It can't be cured anyway. I might as well earn some more money while I can. Anya, can you prescribe something to stop the bleeding? It seems to be happening more often lately." Anya knew my situation. She fell silent, and I saw the corners of her eyes turn red. She secretly turned her head away for a moment before speaking. "You still need to be hospitalized. Don't worry about the money, Next time," I cut her off, not letting her finish. Her mouth, which had opened, closed again. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Finally, I broke the heavy silence. Anya, you mentioned referring a legal case to me last time. Can I still take it? She refused quickly. Your current condition isn't suitable for work. I had no choice but to plead with her for a long time before she reluctantly agreed to send me her friend's contact information. Seeing the worry in her eyes, I assured her, "Don't worry, I'll do my best to win this case for your friend." After a thought, knowing what she was truly worried about, I promised again, "Once I earn the money from this, I'll come straight to the hospital." The next couple of weeks went by smoothly. Anya's friend's case was straightforward, with plenty of evidence. It would be closed in another week. I looked at the final payment deposited into my bank account. I knew they trusted me this much because of Anya, so I called her and invited her to dinner to thank her properly. At the restaurant, we happened to run into some of her colleagues, so we all sat together. Just as everyone was seated, someone else walked in. I looked up. It was Clara. She saw me, her expression unchanged, as she pulled out a chair and sat down at our table. She was good friends with the head of Anya's department and got along well with them, but her gaze toward Anya was distinctly unfriendly. During the meal, Anya tried to deflect drinks away from me, while Clara kept urging me to drink. I remember Leo being a good drinker, not giving face today. Anya's face darkened as she refused for me. He can't drink tonight. Clara, looking like she wouldn't give up, came over to pour me a drink herself. Leo knows whether he can drink or not, she said, her tone full of threat. I knew if I didn't drink, she'd target Anya next. She was always ruthless like that. I didn't want to involve my friend, so I picked up the full glass and downed it in one go. The strong alcohol burned my throat and chest. I drank a glass, and Clara matched me. After many consecutive glasses, I was very drunk. Seeing things were getting out of hand, others intervened. Leo is a good drinker. Let's drink again next time. That's enough for today. Clara seemed unwilling to let me off and continued pouring. Her friend stopped her, joking. If you keep drinking like this, your husband will come looking for me to settle scores. Clara froze, staring at me with a panicked expression. Besides Anya, they didn't know that the man she had married 5 years ago was me. We're divorced, she said sharply. He has no right to control me. For a brief, illusory moment, her tone sounded like she was jealous and sulking. But when I looked up, her eyes were filled with the same clear, undiluted hatred. I realized then that she had always hated me, ever since I tore her away from the man she loved 5 years ago. Anya helped me out the door. She wanted to take me home, but I didn't have a fixed place to live now. I didn't even know where I was going, so I refused. The alcohol was hitting me hard. I fought back a wave of nausea and planned to book the nearest hotel to get through the night. In a daze, I thought I saw Clara following me, but I was so dizzy and the night was so dark that my vision was blurry. I couldn't see anything clearly. I got a room, and just as the door was about to close, someone burst in, grabbed my arm, and threw me onto the bed. My stomach churned, and I rushed to the bathroom to throw up. In the mirror's reflection, I saw Clara standing right behind me. She grabbed my chin, forcing me to look up at her, her tone full of malice. Looks like your luck with women has improved since divorcing me, Leo. I wanted to explain that Anya was just a friend, but it felt pointless. Seeing my silence, Clara, overcome by some unknown anger, forcefully shoved me aside. She gritted her teeth. Leo, don't forget, we're not divorced yet. I couldn't hear what she was saying clearly anymore. I just suddenly remembered that other night, 5 years ago, when she was hugging someone else. I was afraid the reporters would see, so I had quickly pulled her hand to my waist and leaned against her, trying to create the illusion of intimacy. She had pushed me away with the same force back then. Utterly disgusted. Leo, don't forget, we're not married yet, she'd said. I felt weak all over and collapsed to the floor. A metallic taste rose in my throat. Before I lost consciousness, I thought I heard her voice, urgent and afraid. "Leo, what's wrong?" I woke up in a hospital bed, alone. Just as I was wondering who had brought me here, Clara walked in holding a report. Our eyes met. "You drank that little and vomited so much blood," she said, her voice dripping with scorn. "Anyone would think you had some terminal illness and were trying to scam me." My heart leaped into my throat. I thought she knew. She tossed the test results onto my lap. Strong alcohol damaging the stomach, just diagnosed as gastric bleeding. Then came the sarcasm again. 5 years ago, you used the same kind of trick to scheme against me." She had always believed that 5 years ago, I got her drunk and then systematically manipulated her into marrying me. But that incident had been investigated. We had just happened to drink a bit more because we were celebrating a successful deal. The problem was with the last 2 drinks the waiter brought over. They had been sent by her business rivals, intentionally drugged. I just happened to be there. Later, she was forced to marry me to save her reputation, and in doing so, I tore her away from Daniel. That's why she still hated me. Knowing I was in the wrong, I apologized. "I'm sorry. 5 years ago, and it wasn't intentional. Sam and I will pay back the money we owe you as soon as possible." She stared at me, then suddenly laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Isn't it a bit late to say sorry now?" I didn't understand what she meant. She took out her phone and played a video. It was Sam, causing a scene at her company, trashing her office, and injuring a security guard. I anxiously tried to grab her phone, but she sidestepped my lunge. She said mockingly, "Without me, your family can't survive, can it? Leo, after all your scheming, you ended up with nothing. I'd like to see how you 2 brothers are going to pay back what you owe me now." There was a triumphant smile in her eyes. For the past 5 years, she had been thinking about how to get revenge on me. Now that we were divorcing, she no longer had to hold back. Before leaving, her voice came through the closing door. "You'd better think hard about how you're going to fight this lawsuit against my legal team." Clara called the police. She refused any kind of mediation, so Sam was temporarily detained. I tried to deal with her legal team alone, but I was completely overwhelmed. I soon realized I was helpless. Clara was intentionally retaliating against me, and she had countless ways to do it. Instead of running around like a headless chicken, it was better to just ask her what she wanted. When I entered her company's high-rise office, she and her entire legal team were waiting for me. It was rare for her to spend so much of her time tangled up with me. When I received the lawsuit documents, I didn't even look at them. I asked her directly, "Clara, what do you want? Just say it." I heard her scoff. Then she said slowly, "Bankruptcy, of course. I won't let anyone who schemed against me get away." I looked up at her again. I remembered that most of the money I had borrowed from her back then had already been repaid, with only about 100,000 or so left. I then calculated the approximate amount needed for compensation due to Sam's recent trouble. The money in my bank account, plus the fees from the recent case I'd won, was just about enough to cover it. However, I would be left with nothing for my own medical treatment. Without hesitation, I took out my phone and transferred all the money to her account. Clara's phone pinged with the transfer notification. She looked surprised for a second, but quickly composed herself. I said I don't accept mediation. I replied, my voice steady. "If you insist on suing, then sue. If you treat your own husband like this, I'll let the world see what kind of person you really are, Clara." She was stunned for a moment, speechless. Then she seemed to think of something and looked at me with a complicated expression. After a long pause, she took out her phone again and called her secretary. Her face instantly brightened, with a cruel sort of glee. "Why don't you take a look at this first? Today's trending news." She showed me her phone. On the screen was a video of a shabbily dressed man kneeling in front of a building, wearing a sign that read, "Lawyer Leo has no professional ethics, is unscrupulous, and bullies the weak. I demand justice." I frowned, watching. The man in the news was the defendant from the case I had just won for Anya's friend. The case was already closed, the judgment fair. Why was he putting on this show now? Things escalated too quickly. Before I could even figure out what was happening, a flood of negative comments swept over everything online. Someone even dug up our family's affairs from 5 years ago. Sam was released from detention. Clara had dropped the lawsuit and agreed to mediation. Now, just like 5 years ago, we were caught in a whirlwind of public opinion. Those people online were even crazier than the reporters had been. Seeing me being attacked and retaliated against from all sides, Clara seemed to lose interest in haggling with me further. The day I went to pick Sam up, I saw a swarm of reporters rush out from behind Clara, surrounding him, all asking about the embezzlement of project funds and his parents being forced to jump off a building. Seeing this, Sam, without a word, slapped me hard in public. Then he left in a huff, leaving me alone to be engulfed by the crowd. When I didn't respond for a long time, the reporters gradually dispersed. I leaned weakly against the wall and saw Clara walking towards me. Her hands were in her pockets, and she looked at me with an unmistakable expression of schadenfreude. "Leo, you're not all that, are you?" I knew she still remembered what I had said to her a few days ago. She had finally seized the opportunity to show everyone what kind of person I, Leo, really was. I looked up, my voice calm and empty. "Clara, are you satisfied with the outcome now? You finally got your revenge. You must be very happy, right?" I saw Clara's expression change several times. She didn't say anything for a long time. I forced myself to stand up straight, watching as her recent triumphant demeanor vanished completely. Suddenly, I felt extremely tired. I didn't want to have anything more to do with the woman in front of me. I spoke softly. "Clara, the 1-month cooling-off period is over. Let's go get the divorce certificate." A flash of shock crossed her eyes, but she quickly concealed it. Watching my retreating back, her voice, laced with anger and a slight tremor, called out, "Leo, everyone can see what kind of person you are now!" I didn't respond. Sitting in the taxi, I thought about what happened 5 years ago. By forcing her to marry me, I had truly wronged her. But I had tried to explain back then. After her company successfully went public, I had proposed divorce multiple times, but each time she responded with harsh words. "Leo, you want to leave after using me? What you owe me, you can never repay." Because of those words, I started working day and night to earn money to pay her back. In public, I played the role of the perfect husband, accompanying her to various receptions, helping her sign one deal after another. In private, I fulfilled my duties, keeping her parents happy, trying to take care of her emotional needs. In the days after my own parents passed away, I was consumed by self-blame, plagued by nightmares. I would wake up startled in the middle of the night, only to get a call from her, and then I'd have to rush to put on a smile for the cameras, clarifying her relationship with Daniel. Even when she brought Daniel to our home, I learned to pretend not to see. What kind of person was I? She had seen it clearly over these years. Even if Clara's heart were a stone, I should have warmed it by now. I thought what I did was a form of atonement, that maybe it would make her hate me less, but she didn't want atonement. She wanted revenge, resorting to any means, at any cost, to push me into a corner. I let out a soft sigh. Now I was heavily in debt, on the verge of bankruptcy, and I still didn't know how many days I had left to live. Before I died, the most important thing was to find the person who had harmed my parents, to clear their names. I tried to contact some old friends whom I had previously asked to look into the case, but when I rushed over to their office, Clara was there again. Seeing the stack of documents in her hand, I quickly snatched them away, looking at her warily. She looked almost guilty, her voice very soft. I was just passing by. They're your friends and my friends. Is there anything wrong with me looking at the documents?" I didn't say anything. After taking the files, I thanked my friends and left, not wanting to become a laughingstock. On the way back, Anya called me, telling me to go to the hospital for admission. This time I had no excuse. After submitting the new evidence to the court, I took a taxi to the hospital. I thought a couple more days in the hospital might mean a couple more days to live. The culprit would soon be identified. I needed to take care of myself, to be there to see my parents' names cleared. Anya seemed very busy. She said she would come down to pick me up and handle the admission procedures. I waited for a long time but didn't see her, and she didn't answer her phone. I had to go up to her office to find her myself. The hallway was noisy. From a distance, I saw Anya in her white coat, surrounded by a small crowd. I heard a nurse calling for help, saying a patient was causing trouble. I was a bit worried about her and pushed my way to the front. The person was very agitated. He pulled a knife out of his bag and lunged, aiming for Anya's neck. Everyone scattered in terror. My mind went blank. I rushed forward, throwing myself in front of her. Blood, so much blood. My vision turned crimson. I didn't know if it was from my nose or my back, but it wouldn't stop. Before I lost consciousness, I heard Anya frantically calling my name, and another figure rushing over from a distance. Vaguely, I saw that it looked like Clara. I was rushed into the operating room and underwent a long emergency procedure. The knife wound itself wasn't severe, but with my body already ravaged by leukemia, the bleeding just wouldn't stop. Fortunately, I pulled through. After a day in the ICU, I was transferred to a regular ward. When my bed was wheeled out, I saw Clara standing nearby, her eyes bloodshot. I didn't know what to make of it. She was probably there to see if I was dead yet. I hadn't granted her wish. I was still alive. Anya rushed over as soon as she finished her own surgery. Seeing I was okay, she let out a long sigh of relief. In the hospital room, her eyes were already red. I never knew Anya cried so easily, but ever since she'd known about my condition, especially when she saw me like this, she always ended up wiping away tears. I joked, "Anya, am I that ugly?" She looked at me blankly. I smiled. "Did my ugliness make you cry?" Anya suddenly hugged me, her grip surprisingly strong. "That was too dangerous. You should have stayed away in a situation like that." "Honestly," I said, my voice hoarse, "I didn't think much. I just couldn't stand by and watch someone as good as you get hurt. Anyway, I'm a dying man. My life isn't worth much." "Thank you for saving me," she whispered. She stood up, her expression complex, like a doctor's profound pity for a terminally ill patient. After a long pause, she finally said, "Leo, live well." I instantly understood what she meant. "I will," I replied. She couldn't stay any longer and left in a hurry. I had just closed my eyes to rest when Clara pushed the door open. Her face was ashen. She seemed to be losing control, her voice louder than usual. "Is this how she treats you?" I didn't understand what she meant. "What?" Her voice was furious. For her, you'd even give up your life, and she won't even bother to take care of you for a little while." I sort of understood what she was getting at. I replied with a faint smile, "Are you worried about me? Are you jealous?" The next moment her face flushed crimson. She sneered, "Leo, don't be so conceited." I knew it. This was the real Clara. She was only around me because she wanted to see how miserable I could get. I said nothing, not wanting to invite more hurtful words from her. I had been entangled with her for 5 years. Now that I was dying, I just wanted some peace. She still didn't leave. After thinking for a while, I finally came up with a reason. She was probably here to rush me into finalizing the divorce. It made sense. Her relationship with Daniel couldn't stay hidden forever. Understanding dawned on me. After a long silence, I said to her, "Let's go finalize the divorce tomorrow." Clara looked at me, unconcealed anger in her eyes. I don't know why, but having reached this point, I suddenly felt the need to speak my mind. Anyway, I'm dying soon. I won't keep bothering you. Clara heard me. At first, her face was full of disbelief. Then she looked at me lying in the hospital bed, and she suddenly seemed to realize something, her eyes filled with sarcasm. Leo, have I always been this easy to fool? As expected, she didn't believe a word I said. Before she left, I heard her muttering curses under her breath. Psycho. Cursing himself to die just to divorce me. The next day, I messaged Clara, asking when she was free. She replied that she didn't have time. It was like that for the next few days. I had the strange feeling that she didn't really want to go through with it. But the papers were signed. All those hurtful words had been said. All those things done. Didn't she go to all this trouble just to divorce me and be with her first love? Now I was confused about her again. My wound was healing, but my illness was getting worse. Sometimes when I went to the bathroom alone, the world would suddenly spin, and I'd collapse. When I woke up, blood and water would be mixed together, pooled on the tiled floor, a horrifying sight. Anya was worried about me, so she took leave from the hospital to take care of me, never leaving my side. Sometimes, when my dizziness was severe, I couldn't even clearly see who was in front of me. Less than 2 days later, Clara called, urging me to get the divorce finalized. I guessed Daniel was probably making a fuss, which was why she suddenly had time. I had lost so much weight recently that my cheeks were hollow. I didn't want her to see me looking so miserable and pathetic. I deliberately put on a bit of makeup to add some color to my face. Anya helped me downstairs. From afar, I saw Clara walking towards me, her figure slender, dressed in a neat, elegant suit. She was still that cool, unattainable beauty, like a flower on a high mountain. When she reached me, she looked displeased. "You're bringing her to get a divorce?" I rolled my eyes at her and started walking forward. She followed me, watching my trembling figure, and suddenly said, "Your wound is healed. Why aren't you discharged? Are you planning to live in the hospital to chase someone?" "My business is none of your concern," I muttered. Only when I got in her car did I realize Daniel was also there. He turned around from the passenger seat, his face innocent, and said to me, "Leo, you seem to have lost a lot of weight recently." Hearing this, Clara glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Serves him right," she said coldly. I felt annoyed and didn't want to talk. The car arrived at City Hall. As I got out, another wave of dizziness hit me. My illness was acting up again. I saw Daniel take Clara's arm as they entered the hall. Their figures blurred. I couldn't see the path ahead clearly. The next thing I knew, I was being helped out of the public restroom by a janitor. My face was pale. I had no strength left. A few more steps and I was afraid I'd collapse right there. There was a long line for the divorce office, so I had to text Clara and ask if we could come another day. After a long while, I saw her and Daniel walking over from the marriage registration area. They were probably thinking of consulting about their own marriage right after divorcing me. Clara saw me slumped in a chair, pale and completely drained of energy. For once, her tone was uncharacteristically gentle. "What's wrong? Not feeling well again?" I shook my head, staring at her, and Daniel pressed close together. I forced a bitter smile. "I just want to drag out the divorce to deliberately disgust you and Daniel." Her face instantly turned ugly. She gritted her teeth. "Leo, are you sick in the head?" Then she just stared at me like that for a long time. I probably looked truly awful right then. My vision was already starting to blur. The last time I saw her clearly, she looked pleased, her voice laced with mockery. "Look at you, Leo. So pathetic." I really didn't want to collapse so pathetically in front of her and Daniel. I mustered my last bit of strength and hailed a cab. I opened the car window and looked out. She and Daniel were still standing in the hall. I watched her back as she walked away, her figure blurring in my vision. By the time I dragged myself back to the hospital with my last ounce of strength, the blood was already flowing uncontrollably from my nose. Everything went black, and I collapsed. Just before losing consciousness, I remembered what she had just said. "Look at you, Leo. So pathetic." Pathetic! Not in the next life. Anya worked incredibly hard to bring me back from the brink. My body was already at its limit. It must have been difficult for her. Later, she started taking extended leave to care for me full-time. I felt bad about troubling her so much, but she seemed quite at ease, joking. "You saved my life. Now I have to save yours." My eyes welled up, and my heart ached. Besides my deceased parents and the Sam from long ago, it seemed no one had ever been this good to me. Thinking of Sam, I realized he hadn't contacted me in a long time. I knew he was utterly disappointed in me. But when Mom and Dad's case was finally closed, I still hoped he would be there to see it for himself. To see that his brother, Leo, had made up for what he owed the family. I hoped he wouldn't keep blaming me. These past few days, my spirits seemed to have improved a bit. Anya started taking me out for short walks in the hospital garden. The court also called me. The trial for my parents' case was in a few days, and I needed to appear. Finally, this good news had arrived. I was so happy I wanted to tell Sam immediately. The phone rang for a long time before it was answered. It was eerily quiet on the other end. I heard a faint dripping sound, like something dripping into water. I didn't think much of it and excitedly told Sam the news, but he didn't seem very happy. He just listlessly said, "I know." I suddenly really wanted to see him. I'd been in the hospital all this time and hadn't even called him. He'd be mad at me again. Sam sent me an address. Since I was feeling a bit better, I even went to the hospital cafeteria and convinced the baker to let me help bake a small cake for him, his favorite kind. He could be cold now, but he used to love snatching my food. Sam used to protect me. Now I should be more considerate of him. When I arrived at the quiet cafe with the cake, he had already ordered food and was waiting for me. I glanced at the table, all my favorite dishes. I put down the cake and wanted to playfully hug him like we used to, but it felt inappropriate. So I just pushed the dishes closer to him. I noticed his left hand was kept down by his side, never brought up to the table. This time Sam was still cold, but thankfully he accepted my cake, even though he didn't eat it. I knew he wasn't blaming me as much anymore. As we were parting, he suddenly looked into my eyes and asked with a flicker of concern, "Why have you lost so much weight?" My heart leaped into my throat. Even though I was bundled up in a thick coat, scarf, hat, and mask, Sam had still noticed. I guiltily lowered my head, pulling my coat up higher to cover my face. "I've been on a diet lately," I lied. Fortunately, he didn't ask any more questions and left with the cake. Watching him leave, I vaguely saw that his left hand was wrapped in a thick, white bandage. I returned to the hospital. Anya was worried I'd been out so long and scolded me sternly, but I was still very happy. The things I was looking forward to were progressing well, one by one. Seeing me like this, Anya couldn't help but feel happy too. After a while, as if remembering something, her expression turned sad again. Lately, my spirits had been getting better and better, but I was still plagued by nightmares at night. As soon as I closed my eyes, I'd see my parents jumping from that high rooftop, their faces etched with despair. Helplessness would cling to me. Sam's anger, his coldness, Clara's revenge being despised by everyone, everything from the past flashed by like a slideshow. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in a cold sweat. Opening my eyes, I was back in the hospital room, filled with the smell of disinfectant. I shifted, wanting to get up for a drink of water, only to realize someone was asleep in the chair by my bed. I turned on the small bedside lamp and rubbed my eyes carefully. It was Sam. Seeing me awake, he got up and slowly tucked me in, murmuring, "Such a grown man, still kicking off the blankets." Bro, I called out to him, my voice raspy. I was afraid I was dreaming. He probably hadn't heard me call him that in so long. His movement stopped. After a long pause, I heard that familiar, protective voice again. Your doctor friend said you caught a cold and were sick, so I came to see you. His voice, besides concern, carried a hint of despair I hadn't noticed before. I suddenly felt a pang of sadness. We had grown so distant over the years. Since Mom and Dad's accident, we hadn't once sat down and really talked. After a long silence, he tucked my blanket in tighter. You had a nightmare, didn't you? Go back to sleep. I'll stay here with you. My eyes welled up. I listened to him and lay back down. Bro, I peeked out from under the blanket and cautiously asked, Are you still mad at me? He turned off the light. In the darkness, Sam replied, his voice thick. I'm not mad. It's my fault, bro. I've made you suffer all these years. I pulled the blanket over my head again and cried silently underneath. It felt like all the grievances of these past years had vanished in that moment. After a long time, I pulled the blanket down and saw Sam leaning against the bed, quietly watching over me. I remembered the white bandage on his left hand and asked in a hoarse voice, Bro, what happened to your hand? In the moonlight filtering through the window, I saw him quickly lower his hand, saying nothing. He never liked explaining too much, and our relationship had only just started to mend. If I pressed further, he'd get upset again. So I said no more, and closed my eyes, pretending to sleep. Sam seemed to sense my cautiousness around him. After a while, he spoke up again. If you have time in the next couple of days, let's go visit Mom and Dad. We brothers haven't gone together yet. If we don't go soon, they'll blame us. I replied softly, Okay. Not long after, he took a bank card out of his pocket and placed it on my nightstand. The money you gave me to pay off the debts, there's some left. It's all here. Once Mom and Dad's case is over and we get the compensation, deposit it all into this card. I couldn't see his expression in the dark. Doesn't the company still owe a lot? I asked. I took the bank card from the table and handed it back to him. Pay off all the debts first. It's not too late to give it to me then. Sam clutched the card tightly, his voice choked with emotion. The company, it went bankrupt and was liquidated. I sold the house too. Don't worry, Leo. All the debts are cleared. I fought back my own tears and forced a smile. From then on, Sam and I would depend on each other. Wherever he went, I would go. Sam got up, his tone becoming light again. He gently flicked my forehead. Okay, he said with a hint of resignation. When I woke up in the morning, Sam was already gone. Remembering my promise to him to visit Mom and Dad together, I quickly got up and washed. I picked up my phone to call him and arrange a time, but Clara's call came in first. I wanted to hang up, but I accidentally answered. She seemed surprised that I answered so quickly, and was silent for over 10 seconds. What do you want? I asked, my voice flat. Clara spoke coldly. Leo, when exactly are you going to get the divorce certificate? I paused, suddenly remembering that we hadn't finalized our divorce yet. But I was in a hurry to call Sam, so I turned her down. I don't have time today. Maybe in a couple of days. Today I was going to see Mom and Dad with Sam, and tomorrow was the court hearing. I really didn't have time. But to Clara, I was just being difficult on purpose. Leo, what do you mean by deliberately dragging this out? You're already with another woman. What are you trying to do, still carry the title of my husband? She was furious. I didn't want to explain. I planned to just reschedule with her later, but Clara wouldn't let it go. If you don't go today, I'll go find Anya. My voice turned cold. Clara, don't drag other people into our business. She scoffed on the other end of the line. So you don't want me to find her? Then 10 a.m., City Hall. See you there. The call was disconnected, leaving me no room to say another word. I didn't think about anything else and dialed Sam's number. Again and again. The phone seemed to be on silent. It went unanswered. I had a bad feeling. Just then, a nurse told me I had a visitor. It was Daniel. I asked him to take me to find Sam. My body was so weak now, I was afraid I'd collapse on the road if I rushed. Daniel helped me get ready. Just as we were about to leave, my phone rang. It was Sam. "Bro, where are you?" I was so worried about him, my voice tinged with an uncontrollable urgency. "Leo," he said, his voice calm. "I still have some things to sort out at the company. I'll be a bit later." My anxious heart finally settled. His mood had seemed a bit off lately, and I was afraid something might happen to him. Hearing his words, I breathed a sigh of relief. After a moment's hesitation, I decided I should tell him what had just happened. "Bro, Clara wants to finalize the divorce with me today. If you're busy, we can go visit Mom and Dad together tomorrow, after the court hearing." Sam's tone was mild, no objection. "Okay." After hanging up, I contacted Clara again and told her I would be there on time. When I arrived, Clara looked at me in the wheelchair Daniel was pushing with a puzzled expression. "Where did you get hurt this time? You're even in a wheelchair." Actually, I didn't want this either, but when I was leaving the hospital room, I suddenly felt like all my strength had been drained, and I collapsed. It scared Anya badly. She didn't want me to come, but I thought if I didn't go today, I might not have another chance. The divorce with Clara couldn't be dragged on forever. I ignored her and went through the divorce proceedings without saying a word. As we were walking out, she suddenly turned around and asked me, "Why have you lost so much weight again recently?" It was the first time she had shown such genuine, unadorned concern for me. I found it a bit amusing. We were finally divorced, and only now did she notice I'd lost weight. It seemed I had always managed to hide it well from her, but I was never pretending. I really was dying. Before I could answer, Clara took a call and prepared to leave. I wasn't far from her and heard a gentle male voice on the other end. It was Daniel. He was asking her when she would be back, waiting for her to have dinner with him. I shook my head with a bitter smile. Just moments ago, I was actually fantasizing that she genuinely cared about me. I took a taxi back to the hospital and slept soundly. After waking up, I had Anya accompany me to a nearby mall to buy a new suit. I thought, when I go to see Mom and Dad with Sam tomorrow, I need to look my best. Putting on the new clothes, I looked at my hollow cheeks in the mirror, completely devoid of color. I worried a bit. If Mom and Dad saw me like this, they would be heartbroken, right? Would Sam blame me for not eating properly? So I forced myself to eat dinner, fighting back nausea, and managed a few bites with some water. "I'll go to bed early tonight," I told myself. "When I wake up tomorrow, everything will be better." Anya stayed by my side, never leaving. I told her to go home and rest, but she refused. My sudden collapse today had probably terrified her. Fortunately, the night passed peacefully. The next day, I woke up feeling exceptionally good. Anya looked at me, her eyes filled with a cautious happiness. She supported me very carefully as I got out of bed. I pushed her hand away and spun around in front of her. "Look, I'm fine. I feel like my body is getting better and better." She stood in front of me, lost in thought. The next second, I saw her eyes redden again. Anya had specially taken another day off to accompany me to the courthouse. I felt really bad and tried to give her money, but she wouldn't take it. I wanted to find a tea house near the courthouse where she could wait. But in the end, I had to ask her to wait for me at a small dessert shop nearby. I'd been a lawyer for several years, but this was my first time sitting on the plaintiff's side, watching another lawyer win this case for me. The hearing had been going on for so long, and Sam still hadn't shown up. I texted him, but he didn't reply. A bad premonition started to grow in my heart. He had promised me he would be here today. It was such an important day. Sam couldn't have forgotten. When the verdict was finally announced in our favor, I couldn't care about anything else and hurried out of the courtroom. Reporters were waiting outside. I gave a few brief answers, but my emotions were surging, and my head started to spin again. Just as I was about to fall, someone reached out and caught me. It was Anya. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. Her voice was trembling as she said to me, "Leo, don't worry. Your health is the most important thing." I looked up, met her eyes, and suddenly I understood everything. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. I took out my phone and dialed Sam's number. If someone answered, it would disprove my terrible suspicion. The phone rang again and again, but was always met with a cold, mechanical voice. "Sorry, the number you have dialed is temporarily unavailable." At that moment, I felt like a dead tree in the wind, ready to fall at the slightest breeze. I completely lost consciousness. When I woke up, the police were there. They called and asked me to identify Sam's body. The moment I lifted the white sheet, I saw him. His face was mangled from the fall, just like my parents in my nightmares. The police said he had jumped from the top of his company's building. I knelt down, held his cold hand, and looked at his pale face, knowing he would never smile at me again. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I remembered that night in the hospital. After I had fallen asleep, I vaguely heard Sam whisper, "Leo, take care of yourself." I thought I was so sick, I was hallucinating. I never imagined that he was saying goodbye. Later, I went to his empty company office. In his desk drawer, there was a hospital diagnosis report. It read severe depression and bipolar disorder. So Sam had been sick all along. All these years he had been hot and cold with me, and when he saw me, he couldn't control his temper. He was sick, and I never even noticed. No wonder his left hand was wrapped in that thick bandage that day. He had been planning to slit his wrists. My hand holding the report trembled, and I collapsed to the floor. Anya caught me, her own hands shaking as she took out a tissue to wipe my tears. My steps were unsteady as I dazedly walked downstairs. The cold wind blew into me, but I felt no chill. When I came out of the funeral home holding Sam's urn, the sky was overcast, and a light rain was falling. I looked up at the gray sky. Mom and Dad must be blaming me, too. Sam and I had agreed to visit them together. I took a taxi to the cemetery. I went to Mom and Dad's grave, knelt down, and carefully explained to them. "Mom, Dad, Sam and I are here to see you. I finally found the person who harmed you and cleared up the truth. You can rest easy now. I didn't mean to. I didn't know Sam. In the end, I couldn't finish my sentence. After crying my heart out in front of them, I thought maybe I should just wait. Wait until I go down there and apologize to all of them in person. As I was leaving, I bumped into someone. I looked up. It was Clara. She seemed to be waiting for me here specifically. But we were divorced. I really couldn't think of any reason she would come looking for me. So I walked around her without a second glance. I walked very slowly. She stood there for a moment, probably not expecting me to say nothing to her, so she chased after me, blocking my way, her expression somewhat dazed. "Where are you going?" The tear tracks on my face hadn't dried yet. I glared at her impatiently. "None of your business." Her pupils widened in shock. In all the years we were together, I had probably been too good-tempered and rarely spoke to her in such a tone. She froze for a few seconds, then grabbed my arm, frowning. "Come back home with me." I felt like my hallucinations were getting worse lately. It was the first time I had ever heard her use the word home with me. The home she talked about was her parents' house. The house she once told me was her and Daniel's home. She and I never really had a home together. I didn't know what was wrong with her today. When I didn't move, she kept holding my arm. I reminded her, "Clara, you forgot. We're already divorced." Instantly, her face turned so ugly. Finally, at a stalemate, she reluctantly found an excuse. "Mom and Dad asked me to bring you back. There's a family gathering." It was truly ridiculous. Her parents, who had always looked down on me, were now actively inviting me back to their home. But I didn't have a home anymore. Since 5 years ago, I haven't had a home. I shook off her hand and hailed a cab by the roadside. She chased after me relentlessly, her emotions high. "Leo, Mom and Dad aren't well. Can't you be a little more considerate?" I thought about all those years, the days I tried my best to be a good son-in-law. I had been very considerate. Now I didn't want to step through that door, not even in death. So I deliberately said to her, "I'm afraid I'll die in your house, and you'll find me unlucky." Then I saw her expression contort, her face a mask of disbelief, like her emotions were being torn apart. "Leo, what did you say?" I knew she would react like this. She never believed a single word I said. I waved my hand. "Nothing." I got in the car and left. My vision quickly blurred. I would probably never see her again. I got out of the car and went to Anya's apartment. She had helped me so much, and I'd always wanted to treat her to a proper meal to thank her. But I couldn't pick a good place, so she just invited me to her home for hot pot. After all that talk, she was the one doing all the work again. I was becoming a professional freeloader. The hot pot bubbled, steam rising and obscuring Anya's face a bit. That was fine. This way she couldn't see my face clearly either. Maybe I wouldn't look so ugly in her eyes. The hot pot was really hot. I just dipped into the chili oil a few times to taste it. Halfway through the meal, I saw Anya sweating profusely and asked her to get some water from the kitchen. The moment she left the room, my chopsticks fell to the floor. As I bent down to pick them up, a gush of blood poured from my nose again. I quickly covered it with my sleeve. I still forced myself to get up and place the bank card and the note I had prepared earlier on the dining table. "Anya, thank you for taking care of me. If possible, could I ask you to scatter my ashes in a mountain forest? Please accept the bank card. I know it's a bit morbid, but considering our decent relationship, please don't mind." I had thought about it for a long time. I decided not to be buried with my parents and brother. I really couldn't face them. I also don't like the cold, damp underground. I prefer warm, lush mountain forests. Before leaving, I looked at Anya's back in the kitchen. Her shoulders were hunched over, and she was trembling slightly. Why did she still cry so easily? I walked out of the complex and onto the bustling street. It felt like the bone-chilling, gloomy days were finally over. Warm sunlight fell on me, a toasty, gentle feeling. I collapsed by a flower bed on the roadside. A large amount of blood gushed out. Watching the crowd gradually gather around me, my consciousness seemed to be fading away. Clara's epilogue. I heard from a friend that Leo's parents' case was reopened and that he had won the lawsuit. I thought, after all these years, he finally accomplished what he wanted to do. If I humbled myself and went to him, our relationship wouldn't be so tense, right? Actually, when we divorced, things did get a bit ugly. I didn't intentionally make things difficult for him. It was just seeing him like that, his indifferent attitude towards me, that made me furious. The day we signed the divorce papers, seeing him so close to that Dr. Sharma person at the hospital, I couldn't control my emotions. We weren't even fully divorced yet. How dare he find someone new so quickly? So I always looked for opportunities to make things hard for him. That day outside the cemetery, I had clearly gone there specifically to find him. But the words of reconciliation on my lips somehow, damn it, changed. I clearly wanted him to come home with me. I wanted to talk to him properly. I even wanted to remarry him. But he looked like he had completely given up on me. That sentence he said just before getting into the car, that he was dying soon, I just took it as a cruel excuse to get rid of me. But watching him get further and further away, I started to panic. I clearly could have spoken to him nicely. We clearly could have sat down and talked calmly. When I left home today, I was still thinking, I absolutely have to coax him back. So I drove and followed his taxi. When I reached the destination, I saw Anya come downstairs to meet him. Suddenly, I felt like I was being played by this man again. I wasn't resigned. I waited downstairs for a long time, but he didn't come out. Just when I was freezing and about to leave, I finally saw him slowly walk out of the apartment complex. I thought, no matter what, I have to talk to him today. Seeing how slowly he was walking, I went to a nearby boba shop to buy him a hot drink. But when I came out with the drink, Leo was gone. I searched all around but couldn't find him, until I saw a crowd gathered around the flower bed in the park next door. Through a gap in the crowd, I thought I saw a familiar figure. That person looked like Leo. I stumbled towards them, half of the hot drink spilling from my hand, scalding a large red mark on my skin. His face was deathly pale. He was lying on the ground, seemingly breathless. I didn't care about anything else. I rushed to the front and hugged him. Only then did I realize his clothes were soaked in blood. How could this be? How could this happen? A thought suddenly struck me. The day we first discussed the divorce after he left, my office trash can was suddenly half full of bloody tissues. The cleaning lady had asked me if someone had been injured. At that time, I was so focused on how to get revenge on him that I didn't hear her clearly, just told her to dispose of the trash quickly. Maybe back then, he was already... Impossible. Impossible. I forced myself not to think too much. He might have just fainted. I called an ambulance and sent him to the hospital, but the doctors hadn't even started emergency treatment when they said he was already gone. The sudden shock was too much for me to bear, and I collapsed. Actually, after all these years, I stopped hating him long ago. Perhaps I had fallen in love with him long ago. All these years, even if I were a stone, my heart had been warmed by him. That business dinner party. I had initially declined, but his brother Sam told me Leo was also going, and somehow I ended up arriving early. I deliberately ignored them, waiting for him to come and beg me. But he was too stubborn. He would rather draw a clear line with me than ask me for anything. I was furious and stopped our business collaboration. I thought, without me, they couldn't survive. They should have come to beg me by now, right? But he seemed to be doing even better. I don't know why. I clearly wanted to talk to him. I clearly could have been nicer. But when I saw him and Anya together, looking like a couple, I couldn't stop myself from wanting to make things difficult for him. I deliberately made him drink at the dinner table. He had schemed against me like that back then, so he deserved it. I just didn't know he would vomit blood. I was terrified. I rushed into the hospital like a madwoman. I didn't want anything to happen to him. I even knelt on the ground and begged the doctors to save him. Many people took pictures. When Leo woke up, I suddenly felt I was being overly dramatic. If he saw those photos, he would laugh at me for the rest of my life. I had someone delete all the photos that were posted online. Luckily, he didn't see them. But Sam saw them and came to my office, causing a huge ruckus. Because of that incident, everything from before was dug up. Leo wanted to finalize the divorce. He completely hated me. So I thought, I'll help him investigate what happened back then, as my apology. I thought since he took the documents, he had accepted it. But when I followed him to the hospital, he went to find Anya again, and even risked his life to take a knife for her. He went to such lengths for another woman. I finally saw clearly. He never had any feelings for me after all. Later I saw him smile at Anya and care for her. I finally felt that maybe I was the one who was wrong. I never knew how to love someone. In the years he was married to me, he cared for me meticulously at home. He always worked hard without complaint. But I, because of that one mistake 5 years ago, had always been cold and harsh to him. I even urged him to divorce me repeatedly, had Daniel deliberately act with me, hurting him again and again. Even in our last meeting, I still, for the sake of my ridiculous pride, didn't say a single kind word to him. This time I had lost him forever. When I woke up, it was 3 days later. I found out that Leo's body had already been sent for cremation by Anya. I found her furious and demanded to know why. "Why won't you even give me my husband's ashes?" Anya grabbed my collar fiercely and actually started hitting me right there in the hospital hallway. How much must she have liked Leo to risk being fired just to vent this anger for him? "Clara!" Anya gritted her teeth, her fists raining down on me. "Ask yourself, after all these years, have you done right by Leo? Where were you when he was bankrupt? What were you doing when he had nowhere to turn? When he had a terminal illness and was carrying it all alone, what did you do?" I remembered again how Leo had suddenly fainted in front of me, suddenly bled, suddenly said he felt like he was dying. I shook my head, trying to hide my panic. "Clara, you've always been high and mighty. Everyone has to cater to you. But what did Leo do wrong? What on earth did he do wrong?" Anya's punches landed on my face one after another, completely crushing the little bit of pitiful pride I had left. I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth and shakily got up from the floor. It was always me who was wrong. I was wrong. Leo. He shouldn't have had to endure all this. I walked out of the hospital, went to the top floor of my company building, and stood at the highest point, looking down at the city. I thought I saw Leo standing downstairs in a daze. I was transported back to that drunken night 5 years ago when he had secretly whispered in my ear, "Actually, I kind of like you. Actually, my Leo, I love you." The wind howled in my ears. I'm going to find my Leo.